It's the Common Man Podcast with your host, David Redman.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of Common Man Podcast. Today I got my buddy from Anderson University visiting, Mark Butler. Would you mind introing yourself and your title over to you so I don't hack it up, Mark?
Yeah, sure thing. Glad to be here. My official title at Anderson is Associate Provost for Institutional Effectiveness. It's a lot of administration, a lot of words. Mostly I just help the Provost office, which is kind of the academic side of the house, and stepped into that role about a year and a half ago. Before that, I was the Dean of the College of Education there for about 9 years.
Mark and I got introduced through Hyman?
Highland, yeah. Mike Highland?
Highland, yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Mike. Mike, I had him on a few months ago, and we talked about emotional intelligence. And I was kind of just asking him, who else from AU would be willing to accept coming on and just talking about life and exploration and God and stuff like that. And Mark was the first person he thought of. And then I pinged Mark, and we sat down for coffee. And it just so happened that my wife had given birth 30 days before we hung out, and I was almost not even present for just a coffee because I was so zapped. But also because our little girl Ruby has Downs, and you talk about taking an emotional toll, taking a physical toll, an emotional toll, and a spiritual toll on everything that I've ever constructed as reality. Which is so good. And all of those things had me at negative David Redman. And so Mark and I sat down at coffee, and then the first thing I kind of dumped that on his plate, and he said, well, it just so happens that
That is a perfect lead in to, of course I didn't know any of that context when we sat down, but yeah, my background has been fully immersed in that special education world, which of course, works with individuals with disabilities all over the spectrum. But I've had the opportunity to walk alongside a couple of families who are going through that same exact journey that you all are going through. So maybe just chalk it up to Providence that we sat
Imagine
down.
that.
Yeah. So
it was all for me. Thank you, Father. We were awesome. This can be about Mark's life, but I'm going to just tell you, my wife and I were suffering. We were confused. We were lost. We were very emotional. And Ruby is just a dream baby. And symptomatically, and aside from a diagnosis, she's perfect. There's nothing that indicates anything. She looks a teeny weeny bit, different, but she probably looks very closely to me anyway. So, and we're over the moon with how healthy she is and how she's progressing. But we were fully in our feels, and we're still learning enormous things. And everything that we're continuing to discover is that this journey is potentially more beautiful and more humbling than we had anticipated our second baby would be.
Yeah, and you've said it all in a very short amount of time, and I'm confident that is a small peek into the world that you've been living in. But the truth is, all families go through that sort of process, and it's a grieving in a way. You're stripping away some of your expectations and your assumptions about life, and that is hard. It's a challenge, and it'd be ridiculous for someone to be dismissive of how profoundly that can alter your world. And at the same time, what an amazing thing to also have a community around you, to have faith that you can lean into, where so many families are grappling with those same realities without those resources.
Yeah, man. Is it 50% of families that don't have access? And the resources we're talking about are for families that have children of any age with special abilities. There's federal resources.
Mm-hmm.
There are nonprofit resources in every town. There are
there are community resources. There are
church resources for
yep.
special needs. Our church has a Spring Zone environment. Kid Spring is our normal product for kids. Spring Zone is our special needs product, where the environment is directly designed to administer one-on-one care during service times for special needs kids, so that the parents can come and worship the whole time, and that's New Spring, and we have a few different locations, and they would, I'm sure, roll that out at any location in South Carolina that you might attend.
Yeah, and we could just stop right there and have a whole conversation about the number of families who welcome someone into their family with a disability,
right,
and immediately get disconnected from their church family for a lot of reasons, but one of them is just access and not feeling like there's a true inclusivity in that community. And they may say things like, yeah, you're welcome to come to church, but we don't have anything unique for the needs of your child. We don't have anything that is designed to meet them on their level, and just keep them in the back of the sanctuary and be quiet. And that's a feeling that will leave you very quickly feeling ostracized from the faith community that you're hoping will reach out to you in those times. And Eric Carter, who's a researcher in this field, has done an amazing amount of research on the impact of faith and families with disabilities, and the outcomes are not positive. Just to be honest with you, there are a lot of churches who I don't want to get into their motivations, what those may or may not be, but it does take some work to create inclusive spaces, and a lot of churches just don't do that work. And families, by and large, we're seeing the data overwhelmingly shows us that they just sort of walk out of that church experience for a while, and that's heartbreaking, because that's exactly when you need the community the most, when you're in that process of transition as a family. So
from my perspective, it was hard for me to get into church because I was so damn angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a relationship with the Lord that I could speak with him about that immediately. And so it wasn't something that ultimately he didn't integrate into my theology. But that's a lot of big and complex things I just said. And if there's somebody out there that, like me, was very angry, I'm happy to talk to you with the way in which he's reassured me and has helped me craft the narrative of how he would view this opportunity to be Ruby's father. I'm hijacking, but I probably am going to do that a lot now, because one of the things that I think that churches in general that you're speaking to, that looks like Eric, ErikCarter, he's at Baylor. You can Google him.
Mm-hmm.
He's at the Baylor Center for Disability and Flourishing. What a cool thing. Wow. Fun.
Yeah, it's awesome work. Yeah.
Dude, I'd have to dig into what he's doing, but he's easy to find. But yeah, there's two big needs when a child comes into a home, is for care for the parents to help them understand theology. My wife was definitely in that space, where does this fit in with God's plan and how I think of God? And then also having sourcing within the body, strengths within the body, which is basically the congregates in the church, to bring people out of the body that are uniquely gifted or positioned or attention to disability, and plug them in specifically to that person to administer care and long-term relationship building. And
yeah, absolutely.
Gosh, man, it's so hard.
And there are places we were talking about.
Why are we so bad at that? What's going on? America is the most affluent environment ever. What's going on?
That is a huge question. So just in general with disability, or just the
in general, are we doing pretty good? Is America doing pretty good pointing energy at this?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating question. About 2 months ago, I was a part of a workshop led by a faculty member at Anderson named Jeff Moore, and he works in our College of Business and Economics. But his whole thing one of his research interests and also connections with community is how do we create space in industry, because one of the things we know, for example, we in America define ourselves by our work that we do, the things that we do. I don't know how many times you've been at a introduction or a party, whatever it is. And so first question is, so what do you do, right? We want to know, like, how do we define people? Well, employment outcomes for individuals with disabilities is maybe you would say not surprisingly, but very low.
Right.
There are some places in our region that are actually doing an amazing job with this. Walgreens, we would point to as one of those.
How about Publix?
Yeah, Publix does a pretty decent job with that. Walgreens has gotten, I mentioned them because they've gotten some national attention.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they incorporated, and it was really a result, again, of a family member entering the family. So the president of Walgreens' son has a disability.
Right on, that's
and
all it takes.
And it made him very aware
Wow.
of what does this look like for our son 18 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And it changed his perspective entirely.
What was his name? Do you know?
Off the top of my head,
Walgreens CEO?
Yeah, I'm struggling with
That's
it
cool.
just for a second. I'll probably pull it in just a minute. But
Mike Motts?
no.
Oh, different fella.
Yeah, different fella. I could probably pull it off
That's
of this.
formerly Staples. Anyway.
Sorry, I am.
Take your time.
So
Randy Lewis?
yeah, Randy. It's Randy. Yeah. So Randy is the one who started that, and he's still intricately involved with it. He spoke at the at
Has
the
a son with
conference.
autism.
Yep, and it changed the way that Walgreens does business. So now they incorporate individuals with disabilities on all their distribution sites. They have, and people come from all over the place to see what they're doing there. How did they not just give them jobs, but how did they truly create inclusive spaces?
Right.
And what they found, and this is the end result, of course, proficiency and we're definitely driven by outcomes in our country, right? That's just something that's a part of business. But what they found is not only did employment satisfaction go up, but productivity went up.
Preach the gospel.
So they brought these folks in, and they're thinking, well, it's going to slow things down. But it absolutely made it a more joyful place to work, and productivity went way up.
Imagine that. Through our weakness,
Mm-hmm.
God's strength just permeates a loading dock.
Right.
You know, one of his potentially perceivable weaker creations getting in that environment and probably loving what he does, showing up and like being who he is, softens up every other worker and makes them more productive, and all of their productivity goes up.
Right. And so they become this this prototype of what can happen when you bring that in to, again, we're not talking about sacrificing profit margins or any of those things. They actually see increase in those things. And so actually at the same conference, they had one of the VPs in charge of distribution for Sephora who had come to Walgreens, checked that out, and then took that back into their, it took them several years incorporating that in, but at distribution centers, they're running the same sort of program. And that's the sort of thing that gets people's attention. But employment outcomes are fairly low still for individuals with disabilities. Why does that matter? Well, for lots of things. The average adult, so I'm going to use a 21 and up, average adult with a disability has a social network of 3 to 4 people.
Dang.
3 to 4 people. And that includes caregivers.
Right.
That includes people.
That's no one.
That's basically
That's
the
no one,
immediate
bro.
people who are around you. And if you compare that to the average social circle of a typical adult in the United States, it's going to be much larger than that. And where do those social connections come from? They come from our churches. They come from our work. They come from, of course, our interests and the things that we get involved in. And unfortunately, unless there are community resources, unless there's intentionality there, those folks often get left on the side. And so do we want people to have jobs just so they can have jobs? No. But it does provide you with meaning, and it provides you with purpose in what you do on a day-to-day basis. It also provides you with those social connections, same aged peers, same type of peers that you're interacting with. So again, individuals with disabilities, if they require a lot of care, they're often with people who are older, who are very different than them, and that's a very different experience than, you know, if you check out Clemson Life Program, right, where students are, as is age appropriate, finishing high school and going to college and living in a college dorm and spending time with 18 to 21, 22-year-olds and building their social circles and auditing classes and working on campus and doing all the things that build independence and purpose. Those are good models, and they're right in our backyard. So we, I think, are actually pretty fortunate here in the upstate of South Carolina. If you were to punch that out 1,500 miles and go to the middle of Nebraska, are you going to get the same thing?
So Mark mentioned Clemson Life, clemson.edu/education/programs/programs, Clemson Life. And that's where special needs kids can live on campus and then graduate with a degree. And the environment is specific and specially built for them. And but I've heard it's pretty hard to get in.
Yeah, they have a wait list, which you can understand because it is a unique program that they've dedicated resources to.
I wonder where they get their funding. I wonder if Clemson just pays for it. You know?
Yeah, I think that when they initially started that, there was some grant funding that went into it. But now I think it's self-sustaining, and they throw some money at because they do provide some funding for the individuals who are helping them with their campus transition, you know, living with them, you know, those sorts of things.
I wonder what their exit is like.
I actually don't know a lot about, you know, the back end of the program.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah.
Here's a program that says Ruby's Rainbow. Are you familiar with it?
Mm-mm.
Interesting. Mm-mm. I just looked at clemsonlife.com. Yeah, so that's how we started, and I was like barely holding on, and we chatted for a good hour. But I don't even. Why did were we talking about anything else when we were there?
I think we actually just jumped into the conversation about what's your background and how did you get into education, and then that's when I sort of talked about my entry into education really wasn't through a traditional route. I didn't go to school to become a teacher. I had none of that in my view until God sort of pivoted me in a direction. I ended up working ultimately in special education. There's probably a little more context to that I could provide if you wanted it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that's how we started chatting about that. But yeah, I graduated. I went to a small private school in Kentucky, in central Kentucky, Asbury University.
Yes.
And went through 4 years there. It was a great experience. It was definitely a small campus, but
what denomination were you before Asbury? Were you raised in the church?
I grew up in the United Methodist Church.
Methodist, yeah. Asbury what's Asbury's leaning?
They're non-denominational, but Wesleyan holiness movement was definitely a part of their
history.
Yeah, their history, their upbringing, and they've held true to that. I mean, there's, I don't know, in today's landscape, there are schools that used to be Christian, and then there are schools that are fully formed with that identity today. And, and I'd put Anderson obviously in the latter of those categories, right? But you could go up the road to, not to pick on them, but Furman, who used to be a Baptist school and is not any longer.
Wow, yeah.
So Asbury Wesleyan Holiness, which is, theologically Wesleyan, maybe on the opposite side of some of the Calvinist theologies that are out there. But they're non-denominational. So when I was there on campus, we had a lot of students who were Wesleyan in their background, a lot of students who were Nazarene, a lot of students who were Salvation Army.
Who's Nazarene in the U.S.? I don't know any like that claim that denomination.
There are actually several universities that are distinctively like Olivet
Really?
Nazarene, Mount Vernon
Sweet.
Nazarene. So yeah, there are a few of them hanging out
Do you
there.
walk on campus and it's like a bunch of Samsons?
No.
Or John the Baptist?
It would look no different than Anderson. And the students
How's
might
it Nazarene then?
they may not even know.
Oh,
but
there's
they
probably a sect within the Nazarene that
Yeah.
still rolls hard, you know?
Yeah. I think they're probably more mainline denomination than anything else. But yeah. And then of course
Sorry,
United
that's church
Methodist.
humor.
Yeah, United Methodist, Free Methodist. There's kind of a whole line, but sort of broadly Wesleyan in theology, and then kind of pulls from a bunch of different denominations. Asbury is across the street from Asbury Theological Seminary, which is a graduate
okay.
school.
Which keeps it real hot.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they are more directly affiliated
That makes
with
sense.
with some denominations. But
And so, like, the big vigil that went on, like, 2 years ago?
Yeah, a couple
was
years
that
ago.
at the theological, or was that at the college?
that was actually at the undergraduate school at the university. So they call it the Outpouring. But
So that has, like, a cool name.
yeah, they call it the Outpouring. So
Cool.
when I was a student there, they'd had a previous revival in the 1970s, and they definitely talked about it a lot. There was definitely a lot of people who'd come back to campus and talk about when the revival was here. It was a big deal. It was,
And what was it in the 70s?
It was similar to what the Outpouring was. So days and days of sort of prayer and fasting and worship, and it was all student led, and it sort of just grew and grew, and people came from different places and you can imagine the vehicle looks very different in 1971 than it does in 2024, where it's exploding on the internet and people are passing around video in real time of what's happening, where that's obviously not happening in the 1970s. But
16-day viral worship movement. It was February 23.
yeah, that sounds right. Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and as an administrator, I'm also thinking about like, well, there's students here and they're supposed to be going to class, and like, how do we
Come on.
how do we issue academic credit for the semester?
Hey, there you go. Get the creative going. Father.
They did a great job.
I'm sure he said something.
President Kevin Brown did, and his
16-day.
and his and it just kept going and going and growing.
Have you ever been? Did you go?
I did not go. I had some friends who were alums who went down to campus. My folks still live in town, so it was available, I guess, on one hand. This is perhaps not the right posture, but I viewed it really as it was student driven. It was for the students, and
Praise the Lord.
God was doing something for
Just
those
letting them have
students
it.
there.
Yeah,
And
right on. That's cool, man.
I wasn't the target audience.
Yeah, that's
for
cool.
what was happening there.
I like
so,
that.
Yeah.
I
But
think every New Spring, I feel like, has this language that they'll like put out there, like because they have a heart for this thing to break out. You know.
oh yeah, for sure.
I wonder if every church just kind of secretly is hoping for that thing to experience that type of revival.
Yeah, I mean,
What is a revival? If you were having to explain that to a non-believer, what would you tell them, bro?
I don't know, move of the spirit. But I mean,
Which
how do
is
you,
what?
how
What does
do-
that even mean?
How do you define that? How do you categorize that if you don't believe in the spirit, right? So,
So if a group of people are operating normal lives, doing the 9 to 5, and then all of a sudden they stop all of that, and then they stay in one place and worship
focus
God
entirely
nonstop
yeah,
for maybe more than an hour,
yeah.
that could be considered a revival, right?
Hard to keep our attention nowadays. So 16
And it
days
grows.
is incredible.
If
Yeah,
it like grows to like other people from other towns coming over.
yeah. Hughes Auditorium, where that was held,
Yeah.
is a relatively small space. I think I don't know what the official capacity is, but we could put the entire student body in there and it would kind of fill it up.
Mhm.
But that was it. It's it's just an old auditorium, just an old church that's there on campus. And so yeah, maybe around 1,000, 1,200 something. It might be slightly larger than that. But they had, of course, that place packed, standing room only, and then there's a green space out in front, much like Anderson's campus is built, and there were thousands of people out there just waiting to get in, just to go
Wow.
and lined up. And they did the students were permitted to stay if you were a guest, which would include anybody who wasn't a student. They kind of had a rotation
Rotate
and
you
a
in.
time limitation on how long you could be in there because they wanted to allow other people to go into the space.
Very interesting. Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds very like Old Testament-y.
Yeah.
As you're like rotating the Old Testament Jews through the sanctuary into the different rooms.
Yeah. Sort of like prepare your heart out here while you're waiting in line and then go in.
Which is kind of how the old, what was the old, not church, but the old tabernacle operated. There was entry points that graduated
to
never
really
get
thought
finally
about
to
that.
the Holy of Holies.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. They had like a video
running outside
so you could see what was happening.
The worship and speakers and stuff.
Yeah. But all encouragement and praise, recognition to obviously the movement that happened there was of God, but the people who were involved did a great job of sort of staying out of the way and at the same time creating the necessary, and there's such a delicate balance there.
That's so hard.
Yeah.
Very important.
How do you put fences around it without actually fencing it in?
They should do a case study on that. I would love to read that paper.
Sarah Baldwin, who I may have referenced in our previous conversation, she's moved on from Asbury, but she was the director of student development, student life, I think, at the time, and she held a few different roles there. Sarah, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your title at Asbury, but she wrote a book called The Outpouring, which would be a great read to kind of give you an inside look at what was happening on campus and how people experienced it in real time.
Cool. So in Anderson, South Carolina, where we live, there's Anderson University. It's a private Christian school. If you were to pitch it to parents as a really, really reasonable alternative to just a big mega school, public, well, how would you angle it?
Oh,
is that too much on the hot seat, bro?
I don't work for admissions, so I'll put that caveat.
How would you angle it?
Real intentional community on campus, and that is cultivated through programming, but it's just it's apparent in the heart of what they're trying to do there. So our student development team does a great job from welcome week when people first step on. Actually, before they ever come to campus as a student and matriculate, they're invited to campus to participate in something we call base camp, which is really designed to onboard you well, but it's an introduction to the community. So they connect you with older students who are already there. So you have people that you know before you ever step foot on campus.
That's good.
And then we actually run it's a class. It's not academic in nature. It's definitely not challenging, but we call it AU 101. So that first semester when they're there, they're enrolled in this class, and it kind of walks them through every piece of it, but they're with students who are in the same exact place. So they're
piece of like school, of like who they are with God.
All of it. Yeah. I mean, there's a faith piece to it. There's a practical, like how do I register for classes next semester? Right. There's an element of like, how do I get connected to a church? There's also, who do I go to if I'm having a problem with my roommate? It sort of covers all of those different things. As you think about like a 17, 18-year-old student stepping foot on a campus for the first time.
What's it called again?
AU 101 is I think that's what I referenced there. But it really is a very intentional. It's not perfect. We're always tweaking it. We make changes every year, but it's an intentional introduction into the community, and that kind of runs alongside facilitating all of these community events and welcome events with purpose. They're not accidents. They're not.
Right.
We didn't just throw some stuff out there. So real intentional community. I would say.
That's good.
Man, the authenticity and passion of our faculty, they are there for students. And that isn't to say, look, I worked at IU, Indiana University, before I came to Anderson. That's a big mega school. I cared about the students I taught. But it's just very different. And
when you care with the directive of their spiritual walk, it's a different type of care.
Exactly right.
Not like, it's just a different type of care.
Yeah. And I can do that at IU. Or UK,
anywhere, right?
But I have to do it privately, and
right.
And so to be able to just—that's
a big deal.
Makes all the difference.
I think that could be like one of the biggest differences of going to like a private Christian school is that it's not a private conversation. because community wasn't designed. What's that pithy way of saying, like, we weren't designed to hide our private life from our community. We were designed to be like in community and like kind of sharing ourselves so that we could unearth the boulders of the problematic boulders in our lives and stuff.
You sound like John Wesley right now.
Hey,
shout out
I'm
to
a
the
very
Wesleyans.
Timothy Keller guy. Probably
Yeah.
everything I say comes from him.
Yeah.
AU 101 Transitions and Expectations.
Yeah.
It says a mandatory first year experience orientation course designed to help incoming freshmen adjust to college life, connect with campus resources, understand the value of liberal arts education. Alpha groups, core topics. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. It's a good time. They actually have a good time doing it.
I bet they do,
believe it or
man.
not. Yeah.
You know, it's important. I bet it's a great way to help people bond versus just like yo ho ho to the bottle we go and bond that way, you know?
Yeah, and there's a lot of data on this, so I'm not breaking any news here. But this generation of students socializes less than almost any generation before them, and we continue to see downward trends in that.
I can see that, right? They're on their tech.
Exactly.
They don't need to go out.
They're connecting, but they're not socializing. And so then when you walk on a college campus and you know one person from your high school or zero people, you were homeschooled, you know, whatever it is, you walk into that space. And you don't have the practice of introducing yourself and making new connections and doing those things because we just sort of hide in our phones. And that can lead to a real sense of isolation, even when you're surrounded by thousands of people. And there's a danger in that. So you talk about this is a comfort, right? Like I can go here and I can just scroll for a couple hours and feel like I'm connected to maybe some people back home or some of my friends, or maybe even I just go to texting them as opposed to talking to the students who are in the same situation as me on the same campus. So it takes intentional programming. I say programming sounds kind of ministerial, but I don't mean it that way. I just mean we have to be so aware of that. And I would say, you know, my daughter is a 15-year-old, so I see this in real time. When I was 15 years old, now I lived in a smaller town than Anderson, but I would leave home 8 or 9 in the morning during the summer, and I would come back maybe that night, or maybe I'd just ring home and say, "Hey, I'm staying over at so and so's." I was gone all the time.
All the time.
She's got a great little friend group, good girls she's connected to, and they've had these developing relationships for years, and you know, through middle school into high school, and they are talking every day. But my wife and I will often say, you want to go there? You want to have them come here? You guys want to meet up somewhere? No, we're all right. You know, I'm talking to them, you know, and obviously they're seeing the world differently than we do, but their experience is so radically different.
It's super different, bro.
Sort of push them into the socialization and say, hey, this is important. You guys need to go. I'm going to say this in a very healthy way, but like you need to go out there and like figure out how to do life and like take risks and have to like
go through the drive-through together and laugh.
Go to the counter and ask for something, and you know, learn how to just, you know, I don't know, get lost in a store and figure out how to, you know, find your way out of there. Stuff that we did all the time, and we're okay, I think. But they're very risk averse. We're finding more and more, even as they enter college, and less experience with socialization. And so what that means is, if we just assume they're college students, they'll figure this out, they'll find each other, right. And that isn't to say obviously college students are sharp and they have all these skills and abilities that, you know, as a grown up, I have very different experience growing up, and so they're in some ways more skilled in some areas, but
yes,
the places where there are deficits have the unfortunate opportunity to keep them very isolated. Yeah. And when we are isolated, it also increases things like our depression and our anxiety and our frustration with life. And because, as you said, we're built for that. We have been hardwired by God for community.
Right.
So when we are, even if we're living on campus in a community space, if we're not connecting with community, then we're missing something pretty important.
My son, I'm not going to buy him a phone. I'm not going to. And I'm going to buy him an Apple Watch. What I've done is I've gone like phone free on the weekends, specifically on Sunday, just so that he comes up into an environment where dad doesn't always have his phone on him.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll kind of infiltrate into his own expressions. Yeah. It's such a big rabbit hole. And
yeah, and I'm by no means an expert on that. We just sort of have watched as year over year students come in, and we're seeing a little bit more of a divide in a gap between what we assume that they have had in terms of experiences and socialization and readiness for those things, and the reality of what we have on campus. And of course,
Are they teaching? I wonder if people are taking lead on teaching about design and how the phone takes advantage of the human.
Oh, sure.
Are they teaching that at AU at all?
Yeah, that's a good question.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
Like, for example, for the first time this week, I heard my niece who's 18 talking to her younger sister who's 16 and was like, God, look at that screenager. Because the 16-year-old was almost entirely on her phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first time I've heard anybody poking fun at a person in love and preoccupied with what a phone does.
Right. Yeah.
A screenager.
Yeah. That's a new term to me.
Have you heard that
no.
culturally? Have you heard the culture saying look at the monkey over there getting puppeted by their phone? Have you heard anything like that yet?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say it exactly that way, but I mean, I think
you wouldn't. But I'm it plays on the monkey brain.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, there's a science behind
100%.
it. Yeah,
it's a $1 billion engine.
Yeah, they know exactly what they're doing.
Pointed at your attention.
100%. Yeah, and the way you drive up profits is to keep you engaged, and there's science behind reinforcement, and it keeps you connected there.
And here we are, the boring bad guy talking against something that's fun.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think.
But it's not fun, actually.
No.
If you want to really have an expansive life,
yeah,
you need to be out in the world in friction with people, making mistakes.
Yeah.
And not looking at somebody's social feed or somebody else's exploration in a picture.
Yeah, watching somebody else do life, and you're just kind of you're observing it.
Yes.
But I think there's a growing disquiet with this upcoming generation. Here's what we know, and this is Pew Research and Barna Research and different entities who have explicitly looked at this issue. An increasing dissatisfaction with things that are not authentic, and that would include ultimately social connection that is filtered through technology. It's not really authentic, right? It's not real. The biggest critics, I don't know if you saw this, it popped up in May, a couple of places where they had somebody at a college commencement talking about AI, and the students, the graduates, are booing about AI.
Ooh,
yeah,
at the
commencement
presentation.
Speaker, yeah.
He's boosting AI, and they're booing him.
Yeah.
So interesting.
And my daughter, who's only 15, is already super tuned into this AI, and she has she'll look at it within 2 seconds and be like, no, get this AI slop out of my face. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And even, in conversations where they're asked in school to integrate some form of AI or something, they're so resistant to it. They don't.
Why?
I think it just rings false to them.
Are they just full?
I don't know.
So they're tired of the next serving of.
I think they've been surrounded by things that are, that have just been so finely massaged into looking perfect,
curated.
And pretty. Yeah, they're curated their whole life. Everybody's life is curated, and I think they realize.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
That's not real. Even if I tune into it and watch it, I know it's not real.
So then what they've done, I guess, is they've gone to the phone to create a bigger hope for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's the compulsion. Let me go in there and see what's going on and let it build me in such a way where I'd have a great life.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're seeing that what they're being shown isn't real.
Right.
And so that, like,
Yeah, I think they're more sensitive to it.
because
Maybe
they wouldn't, I don't know, they wouldn't have like an appetite to spit that out if they weren't coming to the tool of phone without a hunger for it or something like that.
Yeah.
Authenticity. They're coming to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're
It's
looking
counterfeit.
Yeah, it's
It's
counterfeit.
counterfeit authenticity.
Yeah, they're looking for reality, and I think that's where
They're looking for reality.
Mm-hmm. And that when they encounter authenticity in people and places and experiences, they show up. Like they will drive to those things.
Yeah, like the revival.
Right.
Interesting.
And when they have a sense that it's fabricated, cultivated, not authentic, they're quick to tune out.
It'd be interesting to use a very non-polished church music deliverable to continue to whet that authentic hunger.
Yeah,
because as we get like cleaner and more polished, like if you like, I was looking at a superstar yesterday, and I was looking. He's 45, handsome, amazing, stayed connected, seems to be a family man reasonably. But I zoomed into his face. I was like, he's got no blemishes on his face. Like everything has been lasered off, and so I'm like, oh,
yeah.
I guess that makes sense. Maybe I will do the same thing. But there's this appetite, I think, in all of us for the granular differences that aren't perfect.
Yeah. Well, let's speak for myself here. I think I'm obviously a different filter than my daughter would see it through. But I sort of I'm inherently skeptical of things that look too perfect, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're working that hard to show me a life with no blemishes,
Right.
no bugs, no quirks, no anything, there's probably a lot behind that.
Yeah, it was almost like that was the internet's original invitation, was to see the world in more of its subsurface
Mm-hmm.
expression.
Yeah.
Like, this is how the model puts her makeup on, but she shows pre-makeup, and you're
Right.
like, oh,
Right.
wow, I can't look away. That's so interesting, or that guy has to do this, and he plays professional soccer, but yet,
Yeah.
he deals with this, and you're like, oh, this is so authentic. But now all of a sudden it's like, it's just gotten plastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so that whole era was from the 80s, which were built on, keeping up with the Joneses and all the appearances and all the yuppie greed and all the stuff, right? And the 90s, at least a lot of the cultural expressions
Grunge.
were against it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
there was a
we're fighting against
deconstructionist
it.
approach.
And then boom, the internet comes along and it starts to sell us like, oh, look at all these perfect lives
That's
that are
right.
out there,
And it
all
was-
this stuff, and it's hypnotic, it's enticing. You look at it and you think, oh, that's amazing. I want to be like that.
Right.
And even reality TV that started popping up. Just pick on one, but like Laguna Beach, right? Which was like these teenagers in California and all their perfect lives, and
Right.
like you can follow the drama, but look how pretty and perfect
Right.
everything is.
Right.
And then you realize, oh, it's all scripted, it's all fake,
Right.
it's not real at all. And as that mask gets revealed, sort of, you feel duped, right? Like
Yeah.
we were tricked. We were tricked into
You know how we go through these evolutions of hero worship and then like hero deconstruction? It's almost like the internet is going through a hero deconstruction phase. Social media is going through a deconstruction phase.
Yeah.
Where the user base is kind of like, this is hero worship and it's all fake. For the
Mhm.
first time, they're kind of realizing.
Yeah, and AI I think has maybe perpetuated that some, because it literally is fake. But
what's AI actually going to do? Do you know? What do you think?
oh
You see more stuff than I do.
no, that's beyond my pay grade. I have no idea. I don't know. There are both sides of that spectrum. People who think it's
Are y'all using it at all at AU to kind of
that's a
build
good question.
and get smarter, stronger?
There are some places where it creates some efficiencies for us,
Oh,
for
that's cool.
sure.
Like what?
We're things like building a building a schedule for a student or something
praise the
like
Lord.
that.
Yeah,
You
right,
could
of
you
course.
could use some of that to like
Oh, that's nice.
Intuit what. But there's a real intentional effort. Again, I just go back to intentional. I feel like most of what Anderson does in the positive, it's like, let's be thoughtful about this. So last year they actually rolled out a major in AI, so you can major in AI.
Can I audit some of those classes?
Sure.
I'd like to, man.
The reality is it's not a technical degree where we're teaching people how to build AI bots. It's more like, how do we put this within a worldview of like moral and ethical reasoning, and how do we think about these things?
That's cool.
While we're also exploring like ways that AI could, be integrated into business.
Who teaches that?
So there are a number of different folks who are involved in that. Martin Jones, Dr. Martin Jones is one of the leads on that. Nathan Cox and Chad Trito. Those are a couple of the names of folks who've been involved in building that up from the inception. But they certainly know more about it than I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my background wildly different than all of that. Which I think I was going to share at some point, but then
No, go ahead.
A different conversation. No, I don't have to.
We chase it all, man.
We can have this conversation. I just feel like I'm swimming out of my depth. So
No, you're not. This is. Sorry. Yeah, I probably. I'm like, we'll branch. You know.
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
The good thing is that we don't have to only have this one conversation.
yeah.
But you were saying that you went to Asbury.
Oh yeah, that was a while ago.
I can get you
Yeah.
back.
Yeah,
I got you,
yeah.
man.
We went to Asbury. I went to Asbury as an undergrad. Actually, was one of those kids who bounced around with majors a few times when I was there. Had very little clear direction on what I was going to do. I started out as a communications major actually, and there was a world where, I don't know if I could, at 18 especially, if I could have just drafted my ideal life, it would have been, being on SportsCenter talking about the results of last night's games, or doing play-by-play.
Big into sports.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's where I spent all my time. So that was the dream. So I went there, communications. They have a wonderful communications program at Asbury, and that's that was part of the sell in terms of like, this makes a lot of sense. And after about a year, I was like, this is not really what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have clear direction. I ended up graduating with a degree in Christian ministries, which was probably more than anything the quickest route to graduation because of all the elective classes that I'd taken, and that's why I ended up settling on it.
Mm-hmm.
Had a couple friends who were in the degree, and just sort of made sense. I got to the end. We did an internship, which is pretty common in a lot of academic degrees, and so I worked as a youth pastor at a church that had an opening. I finished my internship. They asked me to apply for the position. Thought it would be a good fit, but I just didn't have a peace about it. It just wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. And I don't have a very good answer for it even today, except for to say, it just didn't feel like what I was supposed to do.
Didn't feel right.
That was in May of that year. I graduated. I was getting married in July with no job. So it was an easier conversation today than it was with my father-in-law back then. Like, yeah, I'm not going to take the job that was on the table there. I'm going to keep being jobless. And still, yeah, we're going to get married. It's all going to work out.
Can we live at your house?
Yeah. Yeah. Just need a place to live and some money.
A stipend?
So did a hard pivot and just started looking for jobs. Somebody recommended to me a position at the Kentucky United Methodist Children's Home for Children and Youth, and it's a ministry of the United Methodist Church in Kentucky, but it's really a place for displaced youth. It's the kids that we had there were there as an alternative to detention, or they were there because they were taken out of abusive situations, or they're there because we had a whole cottage on our campus. It's a residential facility, a whole cottage on our campus with sex offenders. So these are kids under the age of 18 who have been found guilty of an offense, but they're there as an alternative to detention.
Wow.
Regardless, it was my first full-time, big kid job, and I walked into that place and was humbled to begin with the amount of just honestly, just the amount of blessing I had in my life. Like, you kind of see those things, like you're like, yeah, I had a pretty good deal, growing up where I did with the friends that I did. And then you walk into that space and you realize, oh, these kids, like, we live on the same planet, but we are in different universes. And the things that they had been through, the worlds that they lived in, the adults in their world who were supposed to be caring for them, just non-existent. And it was extremely humbling. But took a job as a youth counselor there, and I worked there for a few years, and it taught me very quickly that I had a heart for that population. They were very different than the kids I grew up with. They were very different than the kids I was working with when I was doing youth ministry, but they needed something that those other kids didn't need. And so I felt like God had put me in that place, and I had the, temperament, disposition, the heart for it. So I worked there for a couple of years, and then decided I would go back and get a master's in counseling to better support, just to build my knowledge base. So I actually was a little more competent in that space, because their trauma, the issues were so significant that my my current level of expertise just wasn't enough to do more than just sort of manage.
Right.
So made the decision to transition into that degree, and got about halfway through it when I realized that the kinds of kids that I wanted to work with were never going to have access to the type of counseling that I would likely be doing at the end of this program, because even if they are have access to that through a social service program or a community program, they're going to see their counselor once a month or at check-in points when they're in transition. It's just not going to be a therapeutic relationship, because they're almost all in low poverty. Socioeconomic status is definitely a part of this equation. Most of them are in the system with the state welfare. So when I had that realization, these are not going to be the people I'm working with on a daily basis or weekly basis. Or I started doing my own research to look around, like, where are these kids in their day-to-day, and where could I work with them vocationally in a way that'd be impactful. And it led me to special education, because almost all those kids had an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. They were almost all being serviced for a disability of one type or another. And
all of the kids, like at Kentucky United Methodist Children?
A lot of them, yeah. So they're different. I mean, you're talking about
because
things
their
like
trauma digressed them enough?
Yeah. So you're thinking of, I mean, obviously this is very different than Ruby. This is emotional and behavioral disorders.
Right.
This is oppositional defiance disorder. This is, of course, things like ADHD to the extreme. We're talking about post-traumatic stress disorders that are now impacting their ability to make sound decisions in their daily life. You're talking about personality issues that have become disorders. So a whole bunch of stuff there.
That's cool.
So
that's weighty, bro.
Yeah. But that caused me to pivot into special education. I went and worked on a master's in that was in learning and behavior disorders, but also got me a teaching license at the same time. So I did a hard right turn again and ended up as a teacher at an alternative school. And all those kids have been kicked out of their home schools. And so they all had IEPs, and they were all there because the school district said you can't be in the general population anymore. So a little bit of a step down from where I was with the children's home, but the same type of population. And did that and before transitioning over to the high school, where worked with the superintendent and the principal to develop a behavioral intervention program. And the whole goal there was to keep them from going further down the path where they get expelled or kicked out, or worst case scenario, end up, in the court system or beyond. So that was sort of the focus of my work for a few years, was just in that space working with folks.
A behavioral intervention program.
Yeah.
It seems like an interesting book. Because, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the difference? A lot of counselors lead with that, for
Mhm.
just for a person that's a grown man who's
Yeah.
having difficulties at work. They start cognitive behavioral therapy, I wonder if there's a bunch of good overlap. If you need to get
No.
okay, if you
No. It's
so
just
cognitive, or behavioral intervention.
Yeah. So a lot of it is, I'll just say, fundamentally, a lot of human behavior is conditioned behavior, right? So
what does that mean?
Principles of behavior analysis, right? Where we operate on a series of reinforcements and punishments, and
Meaning, what's that mean?
And people don't love that, because they bristle at that. They want to feel like they're in control of their, like, I make my own decisions, and you do. But for example, and we just talked about the phone, but the phone, like whatever it is, it rings, it dings, it buzzes. We pick it up, and we are either reinforced by that. And when we mean reinforced, is it will increase the future likelihood of the behavior, right? The more often what happens as a result of that is positive, it's just more likely to occur in the future. So reinforcement. Or punishment, meaning you pick your phone up, and I don't know, this is true for a lot of people, I will say, especially my age, where if it's a number we don't know, we don't answer it anymore. Mm-hmm. I would say that that's an example of punishment, because not punishment like you're getting punished for it, but you've taken that behavior of seeing a number, and one time, two times you pick it up and you realize, oh, it's a spam call, or it's somebody just soliciting me for something. And so you learn from that, and you decide, when I see a number I don't know, I'm not going to answer it anymore. Okay. So it's a conditioned behavior. Now, sometimes your phone rings and it's a number you don't know, and it's somebody you really wanted to talk to, and you didn't have it, but it falls into that category behavior. And I would just say a lot of our work is a part of that, right? We work because we are reinforced. In the interim, like on a daily basis, we get reinforced, hopefully, by the types of interactions we have with people, and it's socially gratifying and all those sorts of things. If I'm good at my job, maybe I get praise for doing those things. But even outside of that, we get a paycheck, and the paycheck is then used. That's reinforcement. It keeps me coming back to work. And I would say, with all due respect to Anderson University, and I do love my work there, if they stopped paying me and that reinforcement went away, I'd stop coming to work.
Yeah, it is a transaction.
Yeah, and that is most of our human behavior kind of falls into that. And then, so when we look at disruptive behaviors or behaviors that are challenging from students, we also have to think about it in the context of, like, what in the past has been reinforcing this behavior? Why do they continue the behavior? Mm-hmm. And then what is it that I could possibly introduce to the environment that would keep them from continuing that behavior, or give them an alternative behavior that then they would get reinforced
alternative response to the same stimulus.
Exactly right. So you're sort of...
Do y'all ever do they do like role play stuff? I would think that would be
I did a ton of
primary tool.
I would say I did a ton of. I would just put in the category of like life coaching, although I'm not sure.
You do that now?
I don't do a lot of that now.
Man, you should do that, bro.
But most of
our guys are in desperation for that. It was probably our market probably wouldn't really like that title. Mm-hmm. But if you could find a market-specific title for that, I know a lot of guys that would probably enjoy hey, let me do my annual review with my life coach.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a stigma, I think, especially maybe for males, sort of like
maybe it's a step in the counselor space without having to get counseling.
Yeah. Well, again, most of what I did with those students, I will say, especially like the high impact things that we did in that program, really, if you boiled it down and you took it out of the school and you just sort of, like, if you could just snap your fingers and have the same conversation in a different space, you'd call it coaching or counseling. And that's what we did. So It was highly relational. It was built on trust and equity between myself and the students, and that's a challenging space to enter into because you talk about distrustful of authority, and for lack of a better term, I was an authority figure in that space. I'm wearing a radio to respond to emergencies. I'm in the principal's office, so there's a world where they could just see me and shut me out entirely because those are the people who they don't trust in a school. So I had to do a lot of work quickly to build equity with them so they could see me as somebody I could trust. And the only way you do that is by being a trustworthy person. But, be consistent, be the same person every day, show up for them, listen to them, their side of the story, even when they're in the wrong, still give them an opportunity to talk about it, process what happened. And we did a lot of just sort of, I'm making this really simplistic, but laying out the 3-term contingencies that were going on in their world. So you did this is what happened, here's the consequence that comes with it. Now, let's just go backwards. We can't undo time, but let's imagine we could. Let's go back to that same situation. You had a choice to make there. The choice you made was this. I'm not even judging it, but it led to this consequence. Right. So if we want the consequence to be different, how do we go back to that choice? And let's lay out alternatives. Well, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. There's no way I would ever do that. And, obviously the language was colorful a lot of times, but we were getting into these, sometimes very heated, very emotional conversations and try and stay calm and consistent and go back to like consequences and choices, and also show them I'm an adult. I work here. This is my job. Yeah. But I have the same exact rules in my own world. I make choices every single day, and if I make a different choice, there are different consequences. That's the way it works. So I'm not asking you to follow a pattern that I'm immune to.
Yeah, right.
We're all a part of this.
Yes.
And so they would say, they would call me coach. That was kind of a running joke there. I didn't coach any sports. I love sports. That was definitely, we talked about that as part of my life. But when I walked into school on the first day, because I was a guy and I was in a school, they called me coach. And so for the rest of my time there, people just referred to me as coach. And the students all called me coach for no reason other than I was a guy in a school. That's just kind of how it worked. One day I was walking down the hall with one of the students who was one of my frequent flyers. We had spent a lot of time together in the behavioral program, and we passed somebody, and they said, "Hey, Coach Butler, how you doing today?" And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" When we took a few more steps, he looked at me. He said, "I've never seen you coach anything in your life. Why does everyone call you coach?" And I said, "You know what? I'm a life coach." So I just took on the mantle, right? But
none of those practices change across our age. I don't think.
No.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I would say, just in general in life, if you think about like well-adjusted adults and people who are just sort of doing life with their families and all this stuff. Of course, depending on who you talk to, they're going to measure success differently. But I just say a successful adult is somebody who's living independently and able to take care of their responsibilities and hopefully there's a level of fulfillment in what they're doing with their life, but maybe that's too optimistic. But if we were to take that as the measure of a well-adjusted adult, I would venture to say almost all those people have somebody in their life or have had people in their life at different points who've had those sorts of conversations with them, and they've talked them through. Maybe it's not like, well, I'm thinking about doing this or I'm thinking about doing this, big life, fork in the road sort of things, and maybe more often than not it's the subtle ways that they redirect you and say like, yeah, you really need to think about that, bro, like let's maybe I wouldn't say that, and these kids that I was working with, they didn't have those models, they didn't have those people who were just telling them and feeding into them, not just at the moment when they're getting ready to be expelled or suspended, but on a daily basis. Okay, man, I don't want to go to coach today. Coach, I don't want to go to class today. And I say, okay, well, don't go to class. What do you mean don't go to class? Okay, well, let's talk about this. If you don't go to class, what's going to happen?
Oh, wow, yeah.
What's going to happen?
I follow you.
And they said, well, I'll probably get sent to the principal's office. Okay, well, what happens when you do that? Well, then, we just talk through all of those things. And I say, okay, Everything in life is optional.
Yeah.
And for the rest of your life, it's going to be, the older you get, the more choices you're going to have.
Yes.
Everything is optional. So the decision here is yours. I'm not going to grab you and throw you into a classroom so that then you can be disruptive in there. I want you to make that choice. But I'm going to talk to you about what are the consequences either way. And consequences sometimes has that negative term.
That's really good.
But the reality is consequences just what happens as a result of my behavior.
I'll be thinking about that and how to apply that with my 8-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
Because that model puts him in the cockpit
Yeah.
of decision, you know?
Yeah, and I think, again, I'm going back to when my daughter was 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. She was born with. This is not a testament to our parenting. She was born with this governor in her head that was like right and wrong. Everything was like, how do I do it? How do I not do it? She was hardwired that way. So this isn't like a credit to me, but there were a few times, even at 5, 6, 7 years old, where we'd have these sorts of conversations about why did they do that? Why did that person do that? And we'd say, well, you know, let's think about what was the motivation, what drove it. Now, what's going to happen as a result of them doing that, and just helping her think through. She has that God-given conscience that is ever present in her thinking, and we've been mostly very grateful for that. You know, there are times where
my
it's
wife is basically that way.
Yeah, and the challenge
It's
for
really
someone
good,
like her,
though. She's a really good laborer for beautiful things.
Yeah,
it motivates her and it clarifies her mission, and it informs, which is the part of like self-development that we're all on.
Yeah,
but it also really makes her clear on what she's about to do.
Yeah, where
it's because it's black or white.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
My daughters struggle with that worldview that she has, and again, mostly it's really, really helpful is when things don't work as they're supposed to.
Yeah.
That feeling of injustice or frustration with the outcome because I did the right thing, or that person did the wrong thing and they still get rewarded. Those things are very, very hard to deal with when you have that worldview of like, if you do the right thing, this is what happens.
And, you know, we're only scratching the surface on what me and Mark could probably talk about forever and ever. I'm definitely going to have you back on the show so we can unpack some of this. And this is definitely, I think, where we need to start next visit. Because the funny thing is that if what we're talking about like right now with this one moment is kind of like religion. And the problem is that it can like really put you in the ditch. And one of the telltale signs of religion that I've dealt with in my life is this circumstance I'm in isn't fair. Mm-hmm. And that's because I can't really figure out what I did and what I could have undone, not done, and then how I can prevent my own child from being born with Downs. And so the good thing is that the Lord invites us to relationship with Him in the day, and He invites us into relationship with Him taking care of tomorrow. And that's one of the ways to break free of trying to live a life of determinism. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to pause it there, because that was, you know, this has been so much fun. We've hit so many amazing and beautiful topics, and Mark is just such a wealth of information. If people need to get a hold of you, if people need to find their way to AU, if people need to find their way within AU, what's the best way to get a hold of you, or anyone that they can get connected and ask questions, or stuff like that?
Yeah, well, don't hesitate to reach out to me if something I've said here has sparked something, or you want to make a connection. I'm glad to be that facilitator. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I've been at AU long enough. I kind of know where to point people. So my email is mbutler at, unfortunately I have to write it all out, andersonuniversity.edu. It's the whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, mbutler at andersonuniversity.edu. andersonuniversity.edu is the website. There's some good resources on there. Our website, like a lot of university websites, is sort of always under construction. So if you don't find anything there that you're looking for, just reach out. I'll be glad to connect you.
Aren't we all always under construction? And if you identify with that, welcome to Common Man Podcast, because we are always under construction, and it's God's will, because then builds in us a space for him to occupy. And his strength is made perfect in our weakness. And so, like, claiming weakness, claiming powerless, claiming the life of, like, yes, I'm under construction, please forgive me. That's kind of some of the stuff that we try to exemplify here. The peace and freedom that comes with it is what we're after. Thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you, Mark, for carving some time out of your busy schedule.
Yeah, it's been great.
And we'll see you guys next episode.